The E special on the Lost World, Jurassic Park. You know, they made some action figures of some of the kids that played the parts here in the Lost World. What I want to know is what happens when you go to the store and there's no action figures left. All of them are sold out. And then mine, maybe, the Nick Van Owen action figure, there's rows and rows of them and lots of action figures. Anyway, this is my action figure here, Nick Van Owen. And some of the action figures look like the people in the movie and others not so much.
Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing well. Today I wanted to start a new series. This is going to be the first episode in a new series where I basically go over all of the variants of an action figure based on one character. Throughout Kenner's Jurassic Park line, there were many times when they would make multiples of figures, you know, from Series 1, Series 2, and there were even variants within one series. So this is going to be the first episode talking about the video expert from The Lost World, Nick Van Owen, played by Vince Vaughn in the film. So here we have, this is what I like to call hatted Nick Van Owen, because he is sporting this Jurassic Park cap up here. And this was the first Nick Van Owen released in the series. Now you'll notice that this is nowhere near a likeness to Vince Vaughn, and that's because I talked about this a little in my Dennis Nedry video, but essentially Kenner began production on the action figures during or even before the movie was in production. So they really had no idea what to really go off of. They usually would go off the books and also sort of just add their own spin to the characters. So that's why this first figure looks a little different, is because they were not sure exactly how he would appear in the film. You can see he's sporting this turquoise blue Jurassic Park cap. You can see the face sculpt there. And then the turquoise goes down to his sleeves. And then he's got these sort of olive drab green straps that match the backpack, as well as his shoes, his gloves, and this sort of knife that he's got strapped to his leg there. He's got khaki shorts on, this bright yellow vest, and then for as far as accessories go, he has this video camera right here. He is the video expert. And then he has this water squirting gun, which is actually recycled from Series 1 and Series 2 Dennis Nedry from the first film's toy line. And that's all held on by this backpack, and you can store the gun there, or you can store the camera over there, whichever you prefer. And then he also came with a little baby hatchling pteranodon, which is pretty neat. I actually really like this hatchling. It's a nice rubber flexible material. And yeah, it's pretty neat. So yeah, that is the first version of Nick Van Owen. Now I think it is worth mentioning that on the card back and all the promo materials, there's a version of this figure that is actually ginger. He's red-headed, which is very interesting. That was a prototype that was only shown in photos. That figure was never released. Now the second version of this figure was completely the same head, same sculpt, everything, except all of the green accents, including his backpack, straps, gloves, boots, everything that you can see that's green on this figure was actually brown. They changed it to a brown, and there's a version of this figure that has those accents as well. But that leads me perfectly into our next figure, and this is the second release within the first wave of Nick Van Owen, and you can see immediately by the head sculpt that this is a much better likeness to the film version, a much better likeness to Vince Vaughn. So like I mentioned before with the hatted version, they carried over this sort of these brown accents on the boots and everything over to this figure. Some differences about this figure: he has the improved head sculpt, still sporting all the same clothing and everything. He has this awesome JP logo right here, which before it was on the hat and not on the shoulder sleeve you see there. And this time they had to move it to his sleeve. But overall, it's really the same sculpt as this first figure, just with the swapped head, and you can see all the colors are pretty much the same. Same exact accessories with water squirting gun, and same exact little baby hatchling pteranodon right here. Now I want to get into one of the weirder Nick Van Owen figures, in my opinion. And this is the Nick Van Owen that was included in the High Hide playset. as you can see right here. So this is the high-hide playset from The Lost World, and it featured this Nick Van Owen figure. So I'm gonna go ahead and take him out because this isn't a review on the high-hide, that'll come later, but we're just focusing in on this Nick Van Owen figure here. So he came with this sort of backpack that has like this string that you could pull and so he could hang from the high-hide. And then here is the figure itself. So this figure is more, I would say, aggressively stanced. You can see one foot is a lot further than the other, a lot further in front of the other, especially compared to this figure. And he has a much different costume on. He's got sort of this, like, I don't know if it's supposed to be, you know, some sort of like mountain climbing gear. He's got, you know, like a grappling hook attached to his leg there, and he's got these harnesses on. So he's much more, you know, fitted to go up in the high-hide. But I always thought it interesting that they chose to include Nick Van Owen with the high-hide, considering he's one of the only characters in the film that was never in the high-hide. It would have made a lot more sense to include, you know, Kelly Malcolm or Eddie Carr or even Ian Malcolm with that, considering they spent a lot of time in there, but I digress. So this is a cool figure. It's probably my least favorite of the figures here, just because, you know, it's less screen accurate. But as far as the head sculpt goes, I think this, well, I'm not sure. These heads look maybe a little bit different. It looks like the Nick Van Owen high-hide, it looks like his face is a little skinnier. Could just be my eyes playing tricks on me, but yeah, so that's interesting to note. But yeah, other than that, you know, this is just your typical action figure that came in a vehicle set. Not that crazy. No accessories really or anything. So that's enough of that guy. Now, the final Nick Van Owen that was released for The Lost World is actually this guy. So this is the Series 2 Nick Van Owen, and this is actually one of the most sought after pieces in the Jurassic Park Kenner collecting space. The figure alone can go upwards to, you know, $100 on eBay by itself. I managed to get this guy figure alone for a pretty good deal a while back, and I've been trying to find his accessories, but it is near impossible. And when you do, they are insanely expensive. But just looking at the figure alone, there's something about this figure that I really like. I'm not sure how to explain it. He just looks more, not film accurate, but he just looks a little more, I don't know, realistic maybe? I'm not sure. He's got this strap here, his vest. His boots are sort of strange. He has these sort of like, more like, I don't know, climbing boots or something like that. So that's interesting to note. And he has these like ankle bracelets on. I'm not sure what's up with these, just like some pouches. And he's got his hand, one hand is permanently in a fist, so you can't really do much with that hand. But comparing him to, let's say, this figure right here, you can see he stands actually much taller. The camera's at sort of a weird angle, so you can't really tell. But he's a little bit taller than this guy, which is pretty interesting. And also, the head sculpt looks to be maybe a tad different, and you can see that his hair and eyebrows are brown, while this figure is black. But as far as his accessories go, he came with, I believe, a baby Apatosaurus, and he came with a video camera and all kinds of accessories. He was probably the most accessory rich out of this assortment we're looking at here. But yeah, so this is a really cool figure. If you can find him, I'd pick him up. But honestly, I think out of this assortment, the basic Series 1 Nick Van Owen is probably my favorite. I think he may be a little bit more film accurate with the khaki shorts, and I like his accessories, and he's insanely easy to find. He's not very rare at all. So if you're gonna pick up a Nick Van Owen, I would definitely pick up this guy. But this guy is pretty cool nonetheless. Now, as the final piece of this video, I want to make mention of a unreleased prototype Nick Van Owen figure that was going to be released as part of the Night Hunter series in the Chaos Effect line, which was ultimately canceled. But we do have a few still images and pre-production prototypes of this guy. I'll put up those images on screen, but it looks like he was supposed to be packed with this sort of green Chasmosaurus repaint from the Lost World line. And you can see he has his video camera accessory as well as the water squirting gun. And it is interesting to note that between these pictures there are two different versions. Just like the first release of the figure, there's a version with the hat and a version without the hat. So I just wanted to make mention of that unreleased version of Nick Van Owen, just so we have, a complete grasp of all the figures. But as far as I know, that's it for Nick Van Owen. So yeah, I really enjoyed looking at all these figures with you guys and just kind of sort of talking about what makes them different. And I think it's really interesting to see how many figures were released for a given toy line. Especially just of one character, to have such a wide range of different sculpts is really interesting. So this will not be the last video in this series. I plan to keep this going, and I want to do so many different figures, especially Ian Malcolm, because he had a lot of different figures. But yeah, guys, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for more. I'm not sure what's next on the roster, but I'm sure it's something you guys will like. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.